Welcome to War Bios, where we delve into the most pivotal conflicts in history, examining the strategic decisions, tactical innovations, and human experiences that shape the course of warfare. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're exploring one of the most decisive battles in North American history, the Battle of Quebec. This clash of empires, fought on the snowy plains and fortified walls of Quebec City, would determine the fate of a continent and forever alter the balance of power between European powers. The Battle of Quebec, fought on September 13, 1759, was the culmination of a long and complex series of events that began decades earlier. To understand the origins of this pivotal battle, we must journey back to the early 18th century when the British and French empires were vying for control of North America. The French had established a strong presence in the region, with a network of forts, trading posts, and settlements that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of St. Lawrence. One of the key figures in the early history of the Battle of Quebec was Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville, a French explorer and soldier who played a crucial role in establishing French control over the region. In 1682, Iberville led an expedition to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where he established a series of forts and trading posts that would serve as the foundation for French power in North America. As the British began to challenge French dominance in the region, tensions between the two empires escalated. The British launched a series of attacks on French forts and settlements, including the capture of Louisbourg in 1745. This strategic port city, located on the eastern coast of Cape Breton Island, was a crucial hub for French trade and commerce in North America. The French responded to these British attacks by fortifying their defenses in Quebec City, which had become the capital of New France. The city's defenses were formidable, with high walls and bastions that would prove difficult for British artillery to breach. The French also maintained a strong garrison of soldiers who were well-trained and well-equipped to defend the city. Meanwhile, the British were developing their own strategy for capturing Quebec City. In 1758, they launched a series of attacks on key French outposts, including the capture of Fort Frontenac, which controlled access to the Great Lakes. This victory gave the British a crucial foothold in the region and set the stage for a final showdown with the French at Quebec City. As we explore the origins of the Battle of Quebec, we find ourselves in the midst of a fascinating and complex historical landscape marked by bold strategic decisions, innovative tactics, and remarkable acts of courage. The early history of the battle is characterized by a series of intricate diplomatic maneuvers, strategic planning, and logistical challenges that would ultimately shape the course of the conflict. The French, under the leadership of General Louis-Joseph de Montcalm, were determined to defend their capital at all costs. They had spent years fortifying the city's defenses, constructing high walls and bastions that would prove formidable against British artillery. The French also maintained a strong garrison of soldiers who were well-trained and well-equipped to defend the city. The fate of empires hung in the balance, and the outcome was far from certain. The Battle of Quebec, fought on September 13, 1759, was a masterclass in military strategy and tactics. British General James Wolfe, just 32 years old at the time, had been tasked with capturing the heavily fortified city of Quebec, which was perched atop a steep cliff overlooking the St. Lawrence River. Wolfe's plan was to attack the city from the west, using a narrow path that wound its way up the cliff face. This approach would allow him to catch the French off guard and exploit their weak defenses on that side of the city. As the British army made its way up the cliff, they were met with fierce resistance from the French defenders, who were well entrenched behind strong fortifications. But Wolfe's troops were undaunted, using their superior training and discipline to overcome the obstacles in their path. The British artillery, which had been hauled up the cliff face with great difficulty, played a crucial role in the battle, pounding the French defenses with cannon fire and weakening their resolve. Meanwhile, the French general Louis-Joseph de Montcalm was struggling to respond to the British attack. His forces were spread thin across the city's defenses, and he was unable to concentrate his troops quickly enough to counter the British assault. As the battle raged on, Montcalm became increasingly desperate, ordering his men to launch a series of ill-fated counterattacks against the British lines. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Battle of Quebec is the role played by chance and circumstance. On the eve of the battle, Wolfe had written a letter to his colleague General Amherst in which he expressed his doubts about the outcome of the fight. "I am so far convinced of the improbability of succeeding," he wrote, "that I have called a council of war to deliberate on the propriety of attempting it. But fate had other plans, and the British were ultimately able to capitalize on a series of French mistakes to gain the upper hand." As the day wore on, the British began to gain ground, slowly but surely pushing the French back towards the city walls. The fighting was intense and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. But in the end, it was the British who emerged victorious, having successfully breached the French defenses and poured into the city. The aftermath of the battle was chaotic and devastating. The city of Quebec lay in ruins, its buildings destroyed or damaged by the fighting. The French garrison had suffered heavily, with over 1,000 casualties, while the British had lost around 600 men. But despite the costs, the Battle of Quebec marked a decisive turning point in the war, paving the way for British dominance in North America. As we reflect on this pivotal moment in history, it's worth considering the words of General Wolfe himself, who wrote, "The taking of Quebec is a very serious business. I am in hopes that we shall be able to accomplish it." Wolfe's bravery and strategic genius had paid off, but at great personal cost. He was mortally wounded during the battle and died soon after. In the aftermath of the battle, the city of Quebec lay in ruins, its buildings destroyed or damaged by the fighting. The French garrison had suffered heavily, with over 1,000 casualties, while the British had lost around 600 men. Despite the costs, the British were determined to consolidate their gains and establish a new order in North America. One of the most significant consequences of the Battle of Quebec was the eventual surrender of French forces in North America. In 1760, the French commander Pierre de Rigaud de Vaudreuil surrendered Montreal to the British, marking the effective end of French rule in Canada. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1763, formally ceded all French territories in North America to Britain, with the exception of 2 small islands off the coast of Newfoundland. The Battle of Quebec also had a profound impact on the indigenous peoples of North America. Many Native American tribes had allied themselves with the French, hoping to resist British expansion and protect their lands. However, with the French defeat, these tribes found themselves facing a new and more powerful enemy. The British would go on to establish a series of treaties and alliances with Native American tribes, but these agreements often proved fragile and ultimately contributed to the displacement and marginalization of indigenous peoples. In the years following the Battle of Quebec, the British established a new administration in Canada, with General James Murray as the first governor. Murray worked to rebuild the city of Quebec and establish trade relationships with the local population. However, tensions between the British and French-speaking Canadians would persist, ultimately contributing to the Quebec Act of 1774, which granted significant autonomy to the province. Today, the Battle of Quebec is remembered as a pivotal moment in Canadian history, marking the transition from French to British rule. The Plains of Abraham, where the battle took place, are now a National Historic Site, featuring a museum and commemorative monuments. Visitors can walk the battlefield and gain a sense of the terrain and tactics that shaped the conflict. As we reflect on the legacy of the Battle of Quebec, it's worth considering the complex and often contested nature of historical memory. The battle has been commemorated in various ways over the years, from the iconic painting, The Death of General Wolfe by Benjamin West, to the modern-day reenactments that take place on the Plains of Abraham. However, these commemorations have also been subject to criticism and controversy, with some arguing that they perpetuate a simplistic or nationalist view of history. In conclusion, the Battle of Quebec was a pivotal conflict that shaped the course of North American history, marking the transition from French to British rule and setting in motion a series of events that would have far-reaching consequences for indigenous peoples, European colonizers, and the continent as a whole. As we continue to grapple with the complexities of historical memory and commemoration, it's essential to approach this legacy with nuance and sensitivity, recognizing both the significance of the battle and its ongoing impact on our shared history. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Battle of Quebec. I hope that our exploration has provided a deeper understanding of this pivotal moment in North American history. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography reminding you to keep marching toward victory.